It was on a railroad job in 1906. A prime contractor was overcharging a young subcontractor for rental on a steam shovel. It was the young man's first subcontracting job, and he asked the older man to reduce the rate. But the contractor refused and was nasty about it. Years later, the older man hit hard times. He approached the now successful young sub and asked for an emergency loan. The younger man knew he had paid for the contractor's steam shovel several times over, and he had every right to refuse. Instead, he wrote him a check. Word spread quickly around the railroad jobs of the West. Warren A. Bechtel was a fair man. He said, "When you can't trust a man's handshake, you can't trust his signature." Warren Bechtel worked by and lived by that creed. He built entire projects with no contracts, just a man's word. He took his wife Clara and his 4 kids with him most everywhere, and around the railroad job sites, from teamster to superintendent, people called him Dad. He founded his business based on trust, on integrity, and on a sharp eye for innovation. And those principles have guided the organization he began for 100 years. W.A. Bechtel started moving dirt in Oklahoma Indian Territory with 2 mules and a scraper in 1898. He was driven by a vision of building a better world and a temperament that allowed him to adapt to its changes. He saw his future out west, and his vision told him that machine power would soon replace animals straining in harness. By 1909, Dad Bechtel had hustled enough cash to buy his own steam shovel, proudly emblazoned W.A. Bechtel Company. And by 1912, W.A. Bechtel was the first contractor in the country to replace mule teams with gasoline-powered trucks, and his company designed the first dump trucks, leaving a legacy for innovation that endures to this day. Dad was constantly on his job sites, 10-gallon hat and all, checking jobs. His construction camps were known for great food, and that was smart business. He knew he could deliver for his clients if he recruited good people, and he knew if he treated them well, they would produce the creative spark to innovate. Good people, good treatment, good work. Another lasting Bechtel doctrine. His 3 sons were with him too, Steve Sr., Warren Jr., and Ken, and they all learned Dad's principles. Steve Sr. inherited his father's flexibility and vision. He saw opportunities in pipeline construction and developed a side boom tractor, and a year later, he introduced electric welding in the field. Steve Sr. was following in his father's footsteps, living on job sites. For months on end, he and Laura raised their family in a railroad car named Watika. Like his dad, Steve Jr. grew up on a horse and around job sites, absorbing the business. The 1930s made Bechtel's reputation as a can-do company at Hoover Dam. When Dad Bechtel died in 1933, the 3 brothers took hold of the company. It was jobs like Hoover Dam and the Bay Bridge that taught Steve Sr. to think big. Thinking big meant going international, and in 1940, Bechtel built a pipeline and a road through a Venezuelan jungle. That set the stage for meeting the nation's call for global work during time of crisis. In the 1940s, the Bechtel brothers mobilized for World War II. Across frozen, unexplored Yukon country, Bechtel built a 1,600-mile pipeline to get military fuel to Alaska. They built Liberty ships and tankers and bases all across the Pacific. At Marin Ship in 1944, Steve gave Saudi Prince Faisal a model tanker, a harbinger of the oil-related projects Bechtel would soon undertake in Saudi Arabia, where Faisal would later rule. One of the first jobs? The Trans-Arabian Pipeline that helped fuel Europe's post-war recovery. By the late 1940s, Steve Jr. had joined the company and was out on job sites as a pipeliner. Like his father's children and his grandfathers, Steve Jr.'s sons, Riley and Gary, grew up on job sites, close to the work and eating dust. In 1960, Steve Jr. took over as president. A rapid transit system, like the BART job, was more than a job to Steve Jr. It was a symbol. He saw the second half of the 20th century as a time of rapid change, spurred by high technology. Steve Jr. structured Bechtel to handle those changes and helped usher in the mega years of the 1970s, a decade that saw mega project become part of Bechtel's everyday language. In the early 1980s, the industrial climate changed, and Steve Jr. once again invoked a flexibility that has been the family's hallmark by restructuring the company to meet new markets. In 1990, the fourth generation of the Bechtel family took the reins. Almost immediately, Riley Bechtel faced one of the biggest project challenges in company history. The oil fields of Kuwait were ablaze. More than 700 wells torched by retreating Iraqi troops, an unprecedented inferno in the desert. Bechtel did not back away. Mobilizing more than 10,000 firefighters and support personnel from dozens of nations, they extinguished the fires of Kuwait in just 8 months, instead of the 5 years some had predicted, sparing the region and the world untold additional pollution and health hazards. Under Riley Bechtel's leadership, the company continues its traditions of innovation, integrity, and a constant quest for improvement, displayed currently on such jobs as America's largest infrastructure project, the Boston Central Artery Tunnel. The world's biggest infrastructure project, Hong Kong's new airport program. Privately developed power projects in China, Colombia, India, the Philippines. Cleanup assignments that have made Bechtel the largest environmental contractor in the U.S. for the past several years. All this and much more. Serving customers in the fields of energy, infrastructure, natural resource development, industrial, and telecommunications all over the world. In January 1998, the Bechtel family joined senior company officials in the shadow of Hoover Dam, a fitting place to launch the Bechtel Centennial, the site of Dad Bechtel's last job and Steve Bechtel Sr.'s first mega project, a site Steve Bechtel Jr. had visited as a boy and helped inspire him to become a builder. Steve and Riley Bechtel commemorated all those who had participated in this great effort with a wreath that floated quietly downstream on the Colorado, the river their forebears helped tame. 100 years, 19,000 projects in 140 countries. The result of hard work and an enduring commitment to the business of innovation. All started with 2 mules and a scraper, led by one fair-minded man with a vision.